Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something deeply personal, yet totally universal. And honestly, it's absolutely fascinating. We're talking about the science of talking to yourself. Yep, we're going to look closely at that inner monologue constantly narrating your daily life and see exactly what the science actually has to say about the whole shebang.
Now picture this for a second. Your morning alarm blares, and you instantly mutter to yourself, "Ugh, why did I set it so early?" You stumble into the bathroom, brush your teeth, and think, "Man, I really need a haircut." Then you're rushing out the front door, you reach for your keys, realize they're not there, and just shout, "I cannot do anything right!" Literally right as you lock eyes with your neighbor. Oh yeah, we've all been there, right? That sudden, crushing wave of embarrassment when someone catches you having a full-blown conversation with yourself.
Section 1. Caught talking to yourself? Okay, let's dive into this and contrast the common stigma that talking to yourself means you're mentally unstable with the psychological fact that it's actually completely normal.
Which brings us to Section 2, defining your inner voice. What exactly is inner speech? Like, what are we actually doing when we narrate our daily lives?
Well, despite the whole stigma around it, decades of psychology research show that talking to yourself is a completely normal human function. Psychologists define self-talk or inner speech as verbalized thoughts directed toward yourself or some facet of your life. Now, to be clear, this is totally distinct from just, experiencing mental imagery or silently recalling facts and figures. It actually includes highly specific instructional conversations like telling yourself, "Okay, I really need to work on my free throw." But it also covers those everyday practical reflections like looking at a packed parking lot and thinking, "Yikes, the gym is crowded tonight, I'll just come back tomorrow." And while adult self-talk usually happens silently inside our heads, actually speaking to yourself out loud absolutely falls into this exact same category. But here's the catch. Even though literally all of us do it, studying self-talk presents a massive challenge for scientists. Why? Well, because it's incredibly spontaneous, and it's often done without any conscious control whatsoever. Relying on study subjects to accurately track something they're doing unconsciously is just really tough. Because of this, scientists are actually still investigating some fundamental mysteries here. Like, why do some people talk to themselves way more than others? What exact areas of the brain light up during self-talk? And how does this internal activation actually differ from a normal everyday conversation with another person?
Section 3, the childhood origins and Lev Vygotsky's theory. To understand this, we're going to pivot from modern everyday embarrassment to 1930s Russian psychology.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Russian psychologist Lev Vygotsky originally framed this timeline. He hypothesized that our very first experiences with self-talk are actually highly vocal. I mean, notice how kids speak out loud to themselves constantly when they're playing, right? Vygotsky figured that this outward speech is essentially an evolutionary training ground. By repeating conversations they've had with adults out loud, children are actually practicing how to manage their behaviors and their emotions entirely on their own. Then, as they grow older, this outward vocalization is internalized. It just smoothly morphs into that private, silent inner dialogue that we all rely on as adults.
Section 4, the power of positivity and boosting performance. Let's explore how positive, instructional narration actually helps you plan, work through difficult situations, and stay motivated.
You see, self-talk has this fascinating duality, and its power depends entirely on how you use it. And this brilliantly illustrates a specific, highly effective positive technique known as distanced self-talk. Let's consider the comparison here. General self-talk might just be hyping yourself up, thinking, "I'm going to crush this exam." But distanced self-talk? That's when you talk to yourself as if you're in a conversation with a completely different person. So you might think, "Caleb, you are prepared for this test." Studies show that chatting to yourself in this distanced, third-person format really helps regulate your emotions, much like how venting to a good friend decreases stress. It's especially beneficial for bringing down your heart rate during super anxiety-inducing tasks, like public speaking or meeting new people.
To put that into perspective and prove that self-talk isn't just, background noise, researchers looked at the athletic world. One really cool study focused on collegiate tennis players. When these athletes intentionally incorporated instructional self-talk into their practice sessions, literally talking themselves through their swing mechanics, they showed a measurable increase in both concentration and physical accuracy. So, what you say to yourself in those quiet moments, it has real, tangible impacts on your attitude and your real-world performance. It literally changes the outcome.
Section 5, the dark side. Because we definitely need to explore what happens when our inner monologue becomes excessively critical.
So the crucial point is that there's a serious downstream effect when we let this get out of hand. Look, we're all a little critical of ourselves sometimes, right? But letting that behavior become too frequent or excessively negative is deeply destructive. High levels of negative self-talk are actually predictive of anxiety in both children and adults.
Furthermore, individuals who constantly blame themselves for their problems and just endlessly ruminate on those negative situations, well, they typically experience much more intense feelings of depression. When your inner voice becomes a bully, it directly damages your psychological well-being.
Which leads us to Section 6, retraining your inner voice, using cognitive behavioral therapy. Let's focus on how we can actively optimize this mechanism rather than letting it harm us.
The really great news here is that you're not permanently stuck with a toxic inner monologue. Using cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, you can actively regulate the tone of your inner speech. Step 1 is just identifying those cycles of negative thoughts. You have to literally catch yourself in the act of rumination. And then step 2 is actively replacing those harsh thoughts with neutral, or even better, compassionate reflections. Over time, practicing these specific tools literally rewires your inner speech, significantly improving your overall mental health in the long run.
As we bring this explainer to a close, I want you to remember this really powerful, resonant quote from our source material, that inner voice is a partner you'll be talking to for many years to come. Think about it. You would never speak to a loved one the way you sometimes speak to yourself. So the next time you find yourself chatting away in your own head, whether it's over a lost set of keys or a massive career setback, just remember to be kind.
Which leaves me with one final question for you to ponder today. Take a second, tune in, and ask yourself, what is your inner voice telling you right now? Is it building you up, or is it tearing you down? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Use these tools to master your inner dialogue, and I'll catch you next time.